Hey everyone, and welcome to our first episode of HMH at Home. We're coming to you from our newly reopened museum, and today we're in Bonyack Library. My name is Jenna Norris, and I'm the librarian here.
And my name is Amy Frake, and I'm an educator here at Holocaust Museum in Houston.
And Amy's going to tell us a little bit about how HMH at Home came to be.
All right, so we are currently still in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe you people in the future are not. And we were struggling with what are we going to do this summer? And we know that that's something that a lot of people are struggling with too. So HMH at Home is a weekly video series, and it's designed for individuals, for families, for friends to figure out a little bit, learn a little bit about human rights, maybe get some book recommendations, and we'll also have some activities in each video that you can complete as an individual or that you'll be able to complete together as a family. And we're hoping that maybe you'll also put some of this on social media and share with us what it is that you're doing this summer. So for the first episode, we're here in the library because we're going to be giving you some summer book recommendations. Because if we're going to be stuck at home, we might as well explore in books and nothing else.
All right, so we're going to get started on our book recommendations. For our first book, we are recommending How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. He's the author of Stamped from the Beginning, and also the upcoming book, Anti-Racist Baby. So there's a lot to look forward to from this author. We chose this one to recommend because we've been getting a lot of questions lately from our patrons, just about how to get involved with social justice and support movements like Black Lives Matter. And so really we like to encourage people that the best way to get started is to get informed. And this book is a good place to start with that. So this book is a really good starting place just because it gives a general overview. And it goes into a lot of the terms that are used in social justice that maybe some people might not be as familiar with. So that's really helpful. And also I really appreciate this author's honest and open account of his own personal experiences, which is also really helpful. One of the things this book does is it asserts that the opposite of anti-racism is not to be not racist. But that's not really far enough. The term, not racist is really more passive and even a little bit defensive. And so really, if we want to oppose racism, this book argues that what we want to be is anti-racist. So that means that you are actively engaging in opposing racism and supporting racial equity. So this is a good place to start if you're looking to get involved in social justice. It's especially relevant with current events. So this is our recommendation for that. Amy, do you have a picture book for families to read together?
Yes. So if you're looking for something to read as a family or something for a young reader who's kind of working on reading on their own, we have a great picture book to recommend. This is called When We Were Alone by David Robertson, and it's illustrated by Julie Flett. So this is a really, really gorgeous book with a really interesting and unique style to it. So it's just interesting to look at to start with. I feel like it's the best thing that you can do.
It's the best part of picture books.
Yeah. So this is a story about something called residential schools, which existed in the United States and Canada. So these were places where Indigenous or Native American children were sent because there was this idea that their culture was somehow inferior. And then, at these schools, they were told that they were not allowed to practice their own culture, their religion, speak their language, or even use their own names. But that's really not what the core of the story is about. This is actually a story about family and a story about resilience, about the kind of things you can do to maintain your own identity, even in really terrible times. So the story follows a girl who's looking at her grandmother and wondering, why does her grandmother do some of the things that she does? And her grandmother explains to her how she was able to maintain herself and her culture, even while she was at this terrible residential school. So it's a really interesting way to start off that conversation about racism, about diversity, about the fact that it's okay for us to be different, and that's really an okay thing. So it's a kind of a great comparison with, you've got the How to Be an Anti-Racist, you're getting your toolkit, and then this is a great way to start having that conversation with the rest of your family.
So When We're Alone is more about resilience, but our next book pick is more about active resistance. The next book is White Rose by Kip Wilson, and this one follows the story of Sophie Scholl, who was an activist in Nazi Germany opposing the Nazi regime by creating pamphlets and other materials that she and the White Rose student organization distributed, and that was how they resisted. So this book is actually told in verse, which is a series of poems rather than the traditional story format, which might be intimidating to some people, but everyone I've heard from really loves it. And honestly, I think the poetry makes for a smoother reading, and really gives you the emotion and the feeling behind what these different student activists were feeling at the time. This is actually a book that we did for our HMH adult book clubs, and everyone really loved it. So even though this is marketed as being for YA, so upper middle school and high school kids, this can really be read and enjoyed by anyone. So that is our pick for that.
All right, so our next pick is for a very similar age range, and it is They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. So if you're not familiar with George Takei, he's a wonderful human being. He is a well-known activist, and he's also very famous for his television appearances, particularly on Star Trek. But this book is the story of his childhood. So George Takei is a Japanese American, and when he was a child, during World War II, the Japanese military bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, which is a U.S. military base. And because of racist ideas that anyone who was of Japanese ancestry in the U.S. would actually be loyal to Japan rather than the United States, everyone who was Japanese American on the West Coast was sent to what are called internment camps. So George Takei, when he was just a child, ended up in a camp behind barbed wire just because of who he was. So this is the story that of this childhood, what he experienced, and it's a graphic novel. So if you don't want quite so many words with your books, which I totally understand, their pictures are really great. The facial expressions were really part of it for me. You can really see the emotions on people's faces, and you're getting the child's perspective of what this kind of life was like and what kind of impact it had on George and on his family. So I was rereading this book last night, and something that it reminded me of is there are occasionally words in some of these books that we recommended that maybe not everybody knows. And I want to remind everyone that that's totally okay. So look up words if you don't know them, help each other out if you're doing this as a family or as a friend group, and be kind to each other. Even if you know the word, it's okay if someone else doesn't. My family has a game where we text each other words that we encounter that we did not know before. So join us and be nerds. But this is a really great book for, it's meant for middle schoolers and high schoolers, but it's also really great for adults as well. So Jenna has one more book pick for us, and this is a book that Jenna never loses an opportunity to talk about. So I'm really excited to pass it over to Jenna for our last pick.
All right, so this is actually one of our most recommended books in the library, and it's just because there's something in it that can really appeal to everyone, and it's such a great point of discussion. So this one is called Tell Me Who You Are, Sharing Our Stories of Race, Culture, and Identity. It's by Winona Guo and Priya Vulji. So this story came about because two high schoolers, the authors, realized that throughout the course of their education, they hadn't really had that much that they were taught about race, culture, and identity. And so they decided that at the end of high school, they were going to travel around America and talk to people about these things and collect their stories and create this book. So this book is kind of a continuation of their education and them educating all of us as well. It's a really wonderful, diverse look at America. You know, you get so many different perspectives just from page to page. There's a lot of nice photography in here as well. So it may look like a big book, but actually it is a pretty fast read. Like I mentioned, this is great for starting discussions. I would say probably middle school, high school, or adults are going to enjoy this book. This is a great point to start the conversation in your family about all of these different topics. You know, these two authors are basically our museum's definition of upstanders for taking the initiative to go out there and have these conversations and to get us started in our own. So that is our book recommendations to get your summer reading started.
So this last one, it sounds like if we can't take a road trip because of what's going on with COVID-19, maybe we can take a road trip in a book across
Definitely,
America.
definitely.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a road trip of perspectives.
That sounds amazing. So what we'd like you to do now is we have an activity with every one of these videos. So the activity for this first video is get together either as an individual or get together with your family or your friends, and make a list of the books that you would like to read this summer. Now, if you don't read them all by the end of the summer, that's okay. It's nice to have ambitions. And I keep having people ask me what my goals are for this summer. So if you have a list of books, then you can answer that question and say, I have a list of books. So we've given you a place to start, but obviously think about what you're most interested in, the kind of books you want to read, and share your book list with your family, with your friends, talk about what you're reading, maybe read some stuff on the same thing. So your first part of your activity is to write this book list, and the second part of your activity is to figure out how are you going to get these books. So because of COVID-19, for example, we are not circulating books from our library. I know that's happening in a lot of libraries, but libraries are being really great about virtual resources. So check your local library. They likely have ebooks that you can read even on your phone, and also audiobooks that you can listen to. So lots of virtual options. And also another great option is getting this from an independent bookstore. Houston has really, really wonderful independent bookstores. So if you'd like to buy any of these books, definitely talk to Blue Willow, Brazos Bookstore, or Murder by the Book, and their wonderful booksellers can help you find these and anything else that you think that you might be interested in. So that is your activity for this video, and we're going to have our hashtags at the end of the video. So our hashtag is HMH at home. So we'd love to hear what books you're interested in, what books you're reading, and what you're thinking about these books as you start to read them. So that's your activity for this video. But we also have a challenge that we're going to be doing for this summer, and that is a writing challenge. Many of the rest of our videos are going to be talking about human rights. And so we have a writing prompt, and we're asking if you are a student between the ages of 12 and 19, write something and tell us, why are human rights important? And you can tell us why human rights are important in a nonfiction essay. You can write us a poem. You can write us a song. You can write us a short story, any way that you would like to express yourself. And we're going to put the rules and how you can submit at the very end of this video. But if you're thinking about the question, why are human rights important, and you don't really know that much about human rights, we've got you covered. So the next 2 videos in the HMH at Home series are going to explain a little bit about what human rights are, and we're going to have some great activities that you can do as individuals or as a family or as a friend group, and we will be back with more book recommendations. So in the meantime, let us know, what are you reading? What are you thinking about reading? Using the hashtag HMH at home. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week to start talking about human rights.